and welcome to ThePrint Softcover, which is our digital platform for launching non-fiction books. Usually we do this online, but today we are in the studio and we are joined by Major General Rajpal Punia. Thank you so much for joining us, sir.
Thank you, Suchet. Thank you very much.
And we are going to be discussing sir's book, Rejoice in Adversity, Triumph in War, which is a military memoir. Sir joined the Indian Army in 1984 and is a graduate of National Defence Academy. Since his nearly 3-decade tenure in service,
Almost 4 decades.
almost 4 decades, Sir served in Arunachal Pradesh, Kashmir, at a UN peacekeeping mission in Sierra Leone, and his latest book, he also wrote one in 2021, which was Operation Kukri,
Yeah.
if I'm not mistaken. And this latest book is sort of a collection and an anthology of his learnings, short stories, and things like that. So that's enough for me talking. Now we're going to leave it to the general. Sir, I want to begin by asking you, that's quite a name, it's quite a heavy name for the book, sir. Could you tell us where the inspiration for that came, and did the title influence the book, or did the book influence the title?
Actually, my journey has influenced the title because in military we say more you sweat in peace, less you bleed in war. So you can see the title which says that if you can rejoice or celebrate your adverse situations in life, I think nothing can stop you, nothing can hinder you in your journey of life. So that is what in fact is the background for the title. And as you rightfully said, it's a unique title, but it fits into my military career very, very nicely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the inspiration behind the book is central to the title as well, or did the inspiration just come from you wanting to now bring about a reflection of the years gone by?
That's an interesting background. You see, I started writing to kind of share my experience of life, knowledge. And that is when my wife said that what you're writing may not be to the liking of the young generation. Because I was merely writing about my experience of life and sharing the knowledge or the wisdom with the young generation. That is when I realized that I need to make it more interesting for them to read. You just can't start sharing your wisdom, and that is how I said, let me connect these little stories or incidents of military life and also try and give away those lessons of life which I wanted to. So that is the background. That is how it all happened.
And so contrasting this with your previous book, how do you differentiate the two? Because that was just, I think, focused on one aspect of your military journey.
That is something, Operation Kukri, which launched me into writing. And Operation Kukri, as you are aware, is an operation that happened almost 20 years back in Sierra Leone. And thereafter, it was absolutely, it had gone down into the history and nobody knew about it. COVID happened, and that is when me and my daughter, Damini Punia, both of us sat together for about 1 year and we produced Operation Kukri. That was a commitment given to my soldiers in Sierra Leone, that one day the world would know about it. So that encouraged me, and that is how this is in fact the third book which I am now coming out with.
So just to ask now about the book and the stories that you share, the book begins by you talking about your days in Sainik School, Chittorgarh, and how that influenced your perception of army and army life. Could you tell us about that and how that influenced your journey into the military?
Actually, it started very early, and rightfully, as you said, Sainik School, I was barely 10 years old. But at 10 years of age, living in a hostel, you have to manage everything. And that is how I have written in the book itself, that management came very early to me in life. And that was something which was a stepping stone for joining the military. And the Sainik School, I would say, transformed me into an independent person first, and secondly, maturity came too early in life because one had to manage everything in life, and that is how I would say that the childhood we lost too early, and we stepped into responsibility too early in life.
So that's what sort of then motivated you towards looking towards the army. So, sir, could you talk to us about your early days in the army after you graduated from NDA? How was that like, and the transformation from a cadet to an officer?
One had to wait for a very long time. Almost 7 years of training in Sainik School, 3 years in National Defence Academy, Khadakwasla, and finally 1 year in Indian Military Academy, Dehradun. And that is when you were commissioned as an officer into the Indian Army. I recollect the first day when you were received at the railway station and how you were pushing a 1-ton vehicle and en route to your military station. And once you reach your military station, moment you walk into your room, you find the 6 officers living in one basha kind of a room with common washroom. So these were, I would say, lessons which actually kept you teaching in life, teaching in the military, and each day in the military as a young officer is unique. I mean, you are detailed on such duties, such kind of routine activities that I think life in the military itself makes it so interesting. So young days, early days were there to teach you, to shape you into the officer that you became much later. And that is how life in the military as a young officer is very interesting.
So you were also talking about brotherhood and sort of camaraderie within the unit in the army and things like that. So could you talk about that and how that's perhaps different from civilian life in a way? Because you're in these far places with just your unit at times, far away posts. How does that work, sir?
Actually, military is a way of life. Any other occupation can give you livelihood. But what military gives you is a way of life. You get a life to live. And that is something that can only happen in the army. And you see, the kind of, I would say, spirit which is there in a battalion, Naam, Namak, Nishan. You work for the prestige of your battalion, for your color, for your own, I would say, spirit which is there to be wearing a uniform, and for the national spirit, for the country. Nothing else can motivate you so much what the military uniform motivates you. And the brotherhood, the spirit which comes between soldiers, and I think sky is the limit when you look back today. And if you give me an opportunity today to relive, I think I would like to start again as a military man.
Wow, so that's quite an insight. I think most people perhaps from the army would say that those are the best years and they'd love to relive it again. So taking the conversation forward, sir, I'd like to ask you about a few of the chapters and the instances you mentioned. Could we begin by talking to you about what happened at the Dega Sacha Sauda in Sirsa, and how, as you mentioned, it was not a single bullet was fired in that operation. So if you could just walk us through what happened and what transpired.
It was August 2017, and that is when I think we all recollect how the chief of Dera Sacha Sauda, Sant Ram Rahim, was arrested in Panchkula, and thereafter I think it was a law and order situation wherein at Panchkula it was difficult to control the mobs, the followers of Sant Ram Rahim. That is when I was given the task to vacate Dera at Sirsa. I was commanding the division at Hisar. We mobilized from Hisar to Sirsa, and something which I think was very, very difficult situation I had to handle. It was very delicate, it could go either way. It was not exactly, I would say, a calm or a situation where it was, I would say, the people of Sirsa had come out onto the streets, and the mobs were, I think, creating law and order problem for the civil administration. That is how army was called. I had two options. Firstly is to go ahead with force and vacate the Dera. Secondly was to go ahead and vacate the Dera maybe in some time wherein you know that they are your own people who are inside the Dera. They are people of this country, and maybe the sentiments or the emotions were running too high, and I as a military man had to take the call, and I did give peace a chance. And today when I look back, probably hundreds of lives could be saved, and we vacated the Dera without firing a bullet. And I have written everything in this book, and it is one situation I think which inspired me from Sierra Leone, because I had stayed inside a cordon in Sierra Leone for 90 days, and I could understand the psychology of the men inside a cordon. And here we had cordoned the dera from all around, and I could understand the psychology of the people inside the dera. That is how I connect Operation Kukri with the Operation Ram Rahim, and that is the connect which is there.
So now that you mentioned Sierra Leone, even though your previous book is so much in detail about what transpired, could you just talk to us a bit about what happened there and how you suddenly had to go there? I think you had just come back from Kashmir, and then you were suddenly sent. So the story behind that.
Actually, Operation Kukri is all about prestige of a soldier. We had gone into Sierra Leone for peacekeeping, and I think after a couple of months, the civil war started in Sierra Leone. The militants had surrounded my company and they wanted us to lay down weapons. We did try to make them understand that we worship our weapon. हथियार हमारा भगवान है, or this uniform is our religion, but they did not understand. We had to sort of try negotiations with them for almost, I would say, 75 days, and that is when they did not understand, and finally we had to break that cordon, fight those rebels and come back. And luckily most of us could come back with prestige and honor, but only one soldier, Havaldar Krishan Kumar, he sacrificed his life. And that is the operation which happened, and for 20 years it was disturbing me that I could not write about it. The nation did not know about this success story of Sierra Leone, and that is how I say positive feedback of COVID, because I had time from the office and one could sit together with my daughter and two of us could write this story of Operation Kukri. It's a story which is, I think, I would say every Indian will feel proud reading it. Must read Operation Kukri, I would say that.
So continuing with the book, there's a fascinating chapter on Arunachal Pradesh and how you commanded the oldest brigade there, so the fantastic 5th. Could you tell us about that journey as well?
You see, fantastic 5th, the 5 Mountain Brigade is located at Along in Arunachal Pradesh, and erstwhile it used to be guarding 450 kilometers of line of actual control opposite the Chinese. The only brigade commander who had the, I would say, a helicopter being made available next to his house, that is the kind of, I would say, aura 5 Mountain Brigade commands. And it had actually, it was looking after a number of disturbed areas with the Chinese. The patrol clashes with China used to be very common in 5 Mountain Brigade. This was one journey for me which I today look back and I feel that I think what I could do there in 5 Mountain Brigade, the kind of, I would say, free hand being given to me by my general officer commanding of the division and also the corps commander, I could restore not only normalcy in those difficult areas, but also I would say it was a success story when I look back today. And for a mechanized infantry officer, it was an eye-opener to see the kind of terrain, which difficult terrain which it is encompassing. And all these, I would say, confusion of the alignment of line of actual control, if I can share with you, probably happened because the McMahon line, when the McMahon line was drawn, it was following the watershed principle, and it was basically going along the mountain peaks. But certain areas which were sentimentally, I would say, emotionally attached with the Tibetan people, they had to deviate from the watershed principle. Wherever McMahon deviated from the watershed principle, the disputed areas have come up. And today managing the disputed area is, I think, a major challenge in front of the government, and that is the background to McMahon line.
Yes. I think, that's quite an important insight given what's going on and has been in Eastern Ladakh for a while. So talking that you were in Along is where the region is briefly in Arunachal Pradesh, and this was at what time, sir? Which year did you go there first?
I went in 2011.
2011. So that's still more than a decade ago, and even now, a lot of the parts in Arunachal Pradesh you have a lack of at least internet communication. Back then, I'm guessing even mobile connectivity would have been problematic. So how at that time did you communicate with your family? Was it easy to talk to them or be in touch? Things like that.
Actually, we had to get these call to the family, to my wife through the army line, the military exchange. So it was not very common to not get a call when you wanted to speak because of, I would say, thundering and other issues connected with the difficult area. So connectivity was an issue.
Yeah.
Back then we did not have this facility of, I would say, internet in those areas.
Yeah.
And also road communication was difficult. Reaching along from, I would think, Dibrugarh itself took number of days. We had to cross river Brahmaputra in a ferry. There was no bridge then.
Yeah, you mentioned you go, the car goes in the ferry and then
the vehicle gets into the ferry, and that is how you cross river Brahmaputra. Thereafter one had to drive through the entire difficult terrain. And from along going to the forward areas, one had to walk number of days. We had patrols which had to walk almost 17 days to reach their area and come back. So what actually in 5 Mountain Brigade is that area was very vast and the terrain was very difficult, and that is how I would say survival in 5 Mountain Brigade for the soldiers itself used to be challenging, and then we had to fight the challenge of the Chinese which were opposite us.
Yes, sir. Talking about your time in service and the Chinese, but taking it to the other sector, which is again can be sometimes controversial to say the least, is in your time in Kashmir. So could you talk to us about that and how you went Tanmark, sir, if I'm not mistaken?
I was at Tangdhar,
Tangdhar.
And that happened when Operation Kargil. When Kargil operation happened, I was at Tangdhar, and Tangdhar is like a, I would say, jetty into Pakistan. Pakistan surrounds Tangdhar from all 3 sides, and we were dominated by heights all around. The Pakis were holding dominating heights, and the trans-LC firing used to be very common, and they would bring down such heavy ammunition onto us that it was, I would say, the brigade which I was into was called Chutney Brigade, and the Chutney Brigade was called by the Pakistanis because they thought they could make chutney out of us anytime.
Because they were at the
dominating height.
Okay.
But believe you me, the kind of resilience, the kind of, I would say, the spirit and the josh that we had, we could counter any challenge from the Pakistanis. And Tangdhar, again, I would say, is one posting which taught me so much in life, and that is one thing which I was lucky to be posted. And it was too early in life. I think I went there in 1997, and for me it was like a young officer with full of josh, who is look forward to a challenging situation. And as I said initially, life has been in the military very interesting, particularly for me, because I kept getting these opportunities to be posted to difficult areas, and situations like Dera Sacha Soda, Operation Kukri in Sierra Leone, it was very frequently happening with me. And that is how I got the idea of writing this book, that should I bring down all these incidents into one book for the young reader to read with whatever lessons I wanted to share. So that is how this book happened. That is the background. I think this book was initiated by me.
So now that you're on the other side, say, of the divide and service time is done, how do you contrast civil life, as they call it, with military, or with Fauji life, as it's called? Yeah.
It's quite an effort which is required to come back to the mainstream or the civil life, because you are still living behind the kind of life that you have lived. It takes time to digest the fact that you are no more wearing the uniform. Each day I get up in the morning, I miss my uniform. That is the first thing what strikes me in my head is that you are not going to wear your uniform. That is number one. Number two is you need to keep yourself occupied. So luckily for me, writing has been a big blessing that happened at the right time, and the transformation from a soldier to an author happened at the right time. So that keeps me occupied. But I think it is definitely heartbreaking to say goodbye to uniform and step into the civil life, as you said.
So in one of the sections of the book, you talk about a grenade incident. A splinter came and affected you. So could you walk us through that and what exactly happened?
Well, I think a soldier is never complete without a bullet injury, and God was again kind to give me the blessing of a bullet or a grenade splinter into my knee, and a piece of the splinter I still carry today. Each time my knee clicks, I think it reminds me of the soldiering I have been through. So this particular incident happened in a field firing practice at Babina Ranges, and not following the protocol, I was sitting outside to motivate my soldiers who were getting little scared throwing the grenade because they was throwing the grenade for the first time, and sort of giving a self example of not being scared. I think I crossed that line of not following the laid down protocol, and that is how I got the splinter into my knee. And I have brought out in this book about the incident only to say that I think one definitely needs to follow the laid down guidelines and the protocol, because bravado is something which should not cross a line. That is how I have brought out the incident.
And you say your knee clicks or something. Is there a contraption or a rod which had to be?
No, the splinter is still inside the knee joint.
Okay.
So there were two splinters. In the surgery, they could remove one. And you see, I had to undergo the surgery in a local anesthesia, because after the grenade splinter, I could eat the breakfast. I mean, without realizing that you had to be empty stomach to take a general anesthesia. And the surgeon, he asked me the first thing, Major, I hope you are empty stomach. I said, no sir, I had my breakfast post the injury, and he was quite surprised to know that after taking a grenade, you were eating puri sabji in the langar. Yeah. So that is how, and this particular surgery that happened, and the doctor was quite surprised to hear me instructing him in the operation theatre how to take out the splinter. And later he told me that I think he had one of the, I would say, he said one of the bravest patient he had ever seen in his life, who was motivating the surgeon to take out the splinter. So that is how it happened.
And the surgery was done at the field hospital only? Or?
Yeah, it happened at the military hospital in Babina. Yeah. And luckily for me, the surgical specialist was very good, who could do it the same day when the injury had happened.
So before we run out of time, any long-term lessons or thoughts that you'd want the reader to go away with from your book, that you'd be happy if they take this with them?
The final chapter, Hasten Slowly, is something which I have tried to share my emotions, my heart into that chapter. Something which I think today's youth is getting disturbed at drop of a hat. I have tried to explain that life would definitely be a mixed bag. It would be oscillations of life, ups and downs will happen. So when you are into a situation which is, you may call it difficult, but it's matter of time. Time will change the situation. So just keep carrying on in life. It will be something which at times you will feel that you are into a situation which is difficult, but no, nothing is difficult. It's just a matter of time. Keep moving. And I think it is more important that how many times you fall down and you get up again with that kind of josh to fight back. It is not important how many difficult situations come in your life, but it is more important how you face them, how you take them. So keep moving forward. Like in army we say, pichla kadam aage, keep moving. And that is all I thought I will share in the end. This final chapter of mine speaks about it, how to face the challenges of life. And that is all I had to share on this particular issue.
So thank you so much for your thoughts, sir, and thank you so much for joining us. We hope people read the book and imbibe your thoughts and the detailed stories that you give of your nearly 4 decades in service. Thank you so much again, sir, and we'd just like to show the book.
Happy reading. Jai Hind.